All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Next Gen podcast. You got our classic crew here. You got myself, Chris, Abby, and Andre. We have a question for you today. And that question is, for those of you that are listening that have had a job before, what's the most interesting job you've had? Maybe an interesting interview, or just a job you just
or maybe you
couldn't
have never had a job.
get on board with.
Today we're going to talk about why you should look forward to the workforce, because it's a great place, honestly.
You have the button for it.
Yeah, you literally have the button.
And we always hit
Boring. Why you should look forward to the workforce. It's like,
yeah. Honestly though, getting your first job is pretty exciting. My first job was, I had one interview. I had an interview at a Safeway. I handed out my resume to like every business in Selkirk. The only place that called me back was Safeway. And it wasn't even to actually work at Safeway. It was to work in the Starbucks because they were in desperate need of help. So I went in for an interview. And pretty much the first thing she said was, so when can you start? And I was like, well,
I have one question. When can you start?
and I was like next week, I guess. And she's like, perfect. Sounds good. We'll get you on some training stuff. And like the next week I was watching videos and I was in it. So it wasn't really an interview.
Safeway Starbucks should be like
Illegal.
Yeah.
Wiped off the face of this
They
earth.
should remove the CKS at the end of it and put an X because it's just like a knockoff brand, you know? Like it's like you're going to get a coffee, but you're most likely not going to like it. And then when you return it for us to remake it, we're going to remake the exact same thing you returned.
Because they hire people that are in high school and like, okay, this is the way I was trained, which I don't understand how they thought this was okay, but this is what they did. You watch videos that are like safety training videos. After you go through those videos, they instantly put you in and you work with like one other person. You train for 2 weeks, so that's about 6 shifts. And after, you're expected to know how to do cash, all the drinks, the pastry case, and everything all alone. So like the next week, I was completely by myself. And it was the worst thing ever because I barely knew how to make any of the drinks. People treated me awfully anytime I made a drink bad, because it was like one time, if you wanted a drink and it was lunchtime, you're waiting a good 15 minutes before you order, and then probably another 5 to 10 minutes for your actual drink.
Wow.
So
I would have complained.
Well, yeah, I would have too, honestly. And the whole reason is because they only wanted to staff one person at a time. If you had 2 people, it would go twice as fast. I would always be by myself and I would just hate it because it was like we'd get swamped with customers out the door. But one time there was this guy who orders just an Americano, so super easy to make. And he probably waited a good 4 or 5 minutes for his coffee. And finally I give it to him and he's like taking it and he walks away. He comes back probably 30 seconds later and he has the coffee in his hand and he's like trying to get my attention as I'm doing all this other stuff. And finally he gets my attention and I walk over to him and he's like, I put cream in this. And I was like, okay. Like, what do you want me to? He's like, I wanted to put milk in it. And I'm like, okay, but you put cream in it. Like, we have 2 pitchers and one says milk and one says cream. And he's like, yes, I know, but I thought it was milk. And I was just like, okay, so do you want me to like remake it for you or what? And he just takes the coffee, slams it on the counter. Their coffee went everywhere. Seriously, like legit. This was the worst customer I ever had. Slammed it on the counter, coffee everywhere in front of probably 25 people waiting in a line for their coffee that I now have to clean up before I can continue making other people's coffees, and then ask for his money back.
I'm like, don't bother coming back is what I would have said to him. No joke. I would be terrible okay. I'd be amazing in retail in one part, I think, but then on the one part, I don't know if I could live with guys like that, man. I'd be like,
dude's a menace to
I'm like,
society.
hey man, see those napkins over there? Yeah, go grab some and come clean up your mess is probably what I'd say to him.
Before I give you your money back. Like,
yeah,
I was
seriously. That's interesting. It's very interesting. I can't remember how old I was when I got my first job. I think I was 16.
Is this like a family-based business job, or is this like...
No.
Okay.
My first job was, but then I had like a second job or a third job somewhere in there when I was in grade 12 or just graduated.
So what was your job outside of family?
landscaping. It was an interesting experience. Me and my buddy were in Calgary. I think I went on Kijiji and I found like an ad that said like hiring for landscaping or something. So I was like, sweet.
Nice.
So I messaged the person, and for some reason, me and my buddy felt like we didn't feel good about it. I don't know why. He definitely didn't feel good about it. Like he was like, I don't know if we should go. Like we got hired like really quickly. He was just like, yeah, okay, come for a first day in middle of nowhere east of Calgary. And I'm like, okay. And then like we're getting ready for in the morning, and my buddy's like, I don't feel like we should go. And I was like, we're going. Like we got the job. We're going. This guy was like trying to hire someone, I think, for their worst days of their landscaping like year. So we had to, the first day was just cleaning up his like the shop area, like the grounds that they own with all their stuff. And then the second day we had was planting trees on their tree farm. And it was just like not fun at all. Like it was like a shovel, and we had to plant like 2,000 or 3,000 trees or something like that by digging and planting them. And it was brutal. And then the third day, and I was like, we're going to work hard. We're going to make him realize that we're like the best workers he's ever had kind of thing. And then the third day we ended up going to a condo in which he needed us just to carry 3 foot by 3 foot patio blocks into a condo place all day. So that's when we kind of realized that we think this guy just hired us for an interim time because he needed some 2 guys to do all of his heavy lifting. Yeah, we ended up doing, I think, 5 shifts for this guy, and then he just stopped talking to us.
Nice.
That was my first work experience with an interesting company. What about you guys? First jobs?
I guess my
Or most interesting one?
McDonald's was an interesting place to work.
I bet.
The interview was surprisingly easy. Like I thought it would be harder because I'd never had a job interview before that. So I was like, oh, I don't know what to expect. And he was surprisingly nice. And I think it was mainly because I knew a few people who worked at the McDonald's that I applied to. They were a reference kind of thing.
I'd be so fat if I worked at McDonald's. So
well,
fat.
that's the thing. You get 50% off food.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think the most interesting thing about working at McDonald's was just the different types of people. And I think that's just every workplace, but surprised how many people got so upset over their food at McDonald's. Like I remember this one lady.
Actually, that's me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
She got
You guys suck.
She came every day and she'd get the same thing every single time.
Which was?
I don't remember. It was some burger, but she literally didn't want anything other than ketchup on it.
Did she look healthy?
No, she wasn't even overweight. She was really skinny. So I was like, how do you?
But did she look unhealthy?
Yeah, she looked underweight.
You got to think that
Eating a McDouble
McDonald's
with only
every
ketchup.
No, it wasn't even. It wasn't a McDouble. I think it was what's the
Quarter
other?
pounder
Yeah,
makes
that. It was a
sense.
quarter pounder. She'd always get
Fish
that,
fillet.
but she
Dude,
would.
those are the best.
And she's like, well, make sure you have it right this time. And I was like, was it wrong yesterday? And she's like, well, no, I just want it right. And I'm like, okay. And she did that.
Obviously.
She did that almost every day.
Imagine pulling up in the drive-thru after you give your order and you're like, and make it right this time.
Yeah.
What about me?
How was your McDonald's experience?
Yeah, it was about the same. But I got hired originally for back of the house to make the food. And then they realized I wasn't that efficient at it, but that I had pretty good customer service skills because working at my dad's bakery, that's all I did was cashier stuff. So then they moved me to
What
the
wasn't
front.
efficient with making a burger?
Speed.
I was too
Caring?
yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, I would try my best to make the burger look nice, and they were like, "No, you need to speed it up." And I wouldn't do it, and so they moved me to the front.
I would have came to your McDonald's and be like, hey, is Chris there? Yeah, he's on till. Yeah, I'll get my burger made by him, please. Thanks.
Yeah. I was one of the newest hires that had to do all the crap jobs.
Yeah.
So anything, the one story that it's just awful. So one of the kids went to the washroom, they peed in the play place that we had, but it was down the slide.
Oh.
So then they were like, oh, who's going to go and clean this? Oh, Chris, you can do that. So
It is
then,
now a water slide.
yeah. So now I was trying to climb up the slide and not touch the area that you could see where the pee was. Cause it was a while too that it had been sitting there that
So
no one
just
mentioned
kinda,
it. So
dried.
it was crusty and it's a tube, right? So the smell is just fuming through this entire thing. Yeah, it was awesome.
Gross.
So
Sounds like a good time.
it was. I enjoyed myself. So what's some tips that we can give the youth for getting a first job?
This is my tip, okay?
Yeah.
No matter where you go, like Zach said, if you work hard, people will notice it.
it's not about when it comes down to jobs, everyone always thinks I'm going to work hard so that I get noticed. And again, you're kind of on the wrong side again. You know what I mean? Like if you are the right person and you are someone with a good attitude and you have a good work ethic, that should come out of the fact that that's just who you want to be, not because you're being it to be noticed. Everyone knows when you're just a worker that just is doing it to get noticed. You know what I mean? Like it's whether you keep that ethic up, that work ethic up entirely all the time. Because, and when you do that, even if you don't get what you want in the moment that you're in, like if you're at McDonald's or you're working a custodian or you're working like more of an entry level job, those aren't the worst types of jobs to be in because they teach you a lot of stuff for your future, like discipline and keeping good attitudes, even though you might be doing not the greatest job, just stuff like that. And once you learn it, it's pretty amazing how far those things can take you. But if you keep that work ethic and that personality and that attitude everywhere you go, no matter what, you will get somewhere. Look at Joseph in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're unfamiliar with the story of Joseph, he was sold by his brothers in slavery. Mind you, I would be kind of mad if my brother looked at me and said, yeah, one day you'll be bowing down to me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, we're selling him. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. So, I mean, he probably wasn't the best person to talk to his brothers about in that sense, but they sold him and he became a slave. But then in the next Potiphar's house, he rose to be the head of Potiphar's house, the head of the household, in the sense of that he was in charge of everything that Potiphar needed him to be in charge of, which would have been a very good position for him that way, right? Then another stupid, unfortunate rumor that didn't happened from Potiphar's wife and possibly them cheating on each other, which never happened, and Joseph got sent to prison. And that even in prison, again, because his work ethic, his attitude, who he was, didn't ever change. Everywhere he went, he started interpreting dreams and then he rose to being the head of the prison as a freaking inmate. You know what I mean? The head of the prison. And then from there, he's all of a sudden interpreting dreams for the king, like for Pharaoh, or it's
Pharaoh.
just like, oh my goodness. And then obviously second in command over all of Israel. It's just like
Egypt.
Doors open.
Egypt. It's just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like
Crazy.
And that's a prime example for whoever's listening too, with everything, with school, with your work, with where you're going. If you maintain that, God's got a plan for you, and God will like God's plan for you isn't to stay it's subpar life, subpar work, subpar family, subpar marriage, subpar school, subpar friends. Like that's not God's plan for people. But some people remind themselves that it is because they haven't seen change as fast as they want it to.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get that, but God's got an amazing plan. And if you are good with where you are right now and you continue to work on yourself and be the best that you can be, regardless of whether you fully like the job. I've had many jobs I didn't really fully liked, but that didn't mean that I just all of a sudden took half of my work ethic away and just gave them my bottom of the barrel. No, you work hard and they say that faith without works is dead, right? So if you have faith to become someone that is going to do amazing things, you have to keep working. You have to keep stepping. You have to keep taking steps forward. You can't just sit and chill out. Otherwise, you're going to miss opportunities that God is sending you. But unfortunately, you just weren't being your best self in that moment, and therefore you never even found that opportunity because you threw it away.
Well, with any job, like there's always going to be something that you don't like about it. Always. And that's anywhere you go. Even with people, like there's always going to be that one person that rubs you the wrong way. And you just have to remember that you're there to work, and that it's something you truly like in the end. Like, I mean, when you're in an entry-level job, obviously it's not something you want to do for the rest of your life. But when you're where you are for the rest of, where you think you want to be for the rest of your life, there is going to be someone who rubs you the wrong way. And you have to just remember that this is where you want to be, and that there's a reason why you want to be there.
And who you are will transform where you work too.
Yeah, exactly.
If you hate it and you decide to just be the bigger person and be what no one else in your job is being, you'll transform that entire workplace and maybe even create it into something that people want to work at. Well, God's created you a certain way, and we change the way, like if God wired us a certain way, so we are wired like that. That computer is wired to be a computer. Now, if we start altering the computer programming and softwares, we can kind of change it to be what we want. But in the end, it's always wired to be a computer. We're wired the way that God's created us, but our programming in our life sometimes changes because of the decisions we make, the attitudes we have, the friends we get, what we choose to spend our time on, our priorities, how we've been raised. So many different things changes our programming. And sometimes when we change our programming, we no longer think that God has an amazing plan for us, even though we're wired to be someone that's going to do amazing things in your life, but you might not ever see that because you are more focused on having fun at work or more focused on what's best for you at work at times. Obviously, there's a good balance with that, but it's realizing and just trusting God too. Work hard, trust God, be a good influence, encourage people, think of what you can give to other people rather than only what you can take. And you'll be, like I said, I wouldn't even know that where I was 5 years ago from now. And I have no idea where I'll be 5 years from now. All I know is that I love the place that I work at. I have a heart for the ministry that here, and that's okay with me. I'm content with it because it's just like, I'm going to work as hard as I can right now, and God's always going to make a way.
Thanks everybody for listening. We have podcasts coming out every single Monday. Our release date has changed if you didn't know. Catch us on Apple Music, Spotify. There's a shorter video version on YouTube, which you might be watching right now.
Instagram Reels.
We got Instagram Reels. Follow us on Instagram at SpringsYouthWPG, and we will see you guys next week. Peace, everybody.
Sweet.